Well, thank you, Chris. Let me really thank very much for the IIC to invite us to make some remark. You know, I'm from Botswana. I work for the communication regulator, which is actually regulating both telecommunication, broadcasting, and postal services. And we also do spectrum management. In short, we use the abbreviation of BOCRA. That's how we call ourselves. Botswana is, those who may not be aware, is small in terms of population, but big in terms of size, because the population is about 2 million, and I think the size we are almost 580 square kilometers. So really it's a vast land to cover for us in terms of providing service. So universal access does become a challenge in our country because we have sparsely populated area, and our market is more characterized in terms of having, mobile penetration is the key. We have less developed on the fixed penetration. Of late, just as a summary, what we have done is the government, when they privatized the incumbent, they separated and taken the backbone infrastructure, created a separate company so that that infrastructure can be shared by all service providers on an equal footing. So that is, in summary, our market in Botswana. Regulation is challenging. Some of us who have been involved for quite a long time, we are seeing very, very different challenges which we used to be facing previously. Previous issues were easy. It was market entry. Guys wanted to enter the market, and it's simple. That the definition is mobile operators, fixed operators. But that has changed. We are seeing more and more innovative services wanting to enter the market. And our approach as a regulator, more especially because we are still small and learning, what we have approached is basically said, if there is an innovative service which is coming, the best thing we can do is, how can we facilitate it to enter the market? We just give a general authorization, enter and do whatever you do. As you grow, we'll come and see if there is a need for us to regulate you. That has been the approach. Of course, it does create challenges that as these guys grow in the market, you will find that they are operating mainly without regulation, and the guys who are on the traditional platforms, you are applying regulation. So it does create a problem that you have an asymmetric way of applying regulation. So you have to go back and say, how do I approach this? And that has been one of the challenges when you are dealing with innovative services, that we need to approach this thing. But to me, the benefit is to the consumer, because we want the consumers to have access to these services so that they can benefit. One other major challenge just to highlight from a regulator is, as regulators, we play an intermediary role. We sit between the industry and the policymakers and the politicians sometimes. And that role can be very difficult. And I think most of our colleagues on the regulation side, we know that sometimes the politicians, they all want the service to be provided free of charge. But we know on the other side, there is the cost of providing that service. And we do face those challenges when, things like, I think, I don't know whether in other countries, in Botswana and South Africa, we had a group which was lobbying very hard saying, #data price must fall. And we had to now say, how do we deal with this thing? If we prescribe to the service providers to say, the price has to be so much. On the other hand, the industry shows us the cost of providing service so much. And those are the things we should do face. And we always work with the industry to say, let's find the best solution, because it is one of those challenges that sometimes in our area, it's not economically viable to provide certain services. The way we provide is basically like a tax. You will find that the guys who are in town, we get more money from them in order to subsidize the rural guys. So there is nothing we can do, and we do accept that is the only way sometimes to provide the service. And it does create problem that people will compare in other markets to say, no, it's cheaper when I go to London to get a service. I said, yeah, but if we were to compare the guy I'm asking the operator to go and provide a service in a village which has more than 500 people, you can understand the challenges which he's facing. So those are the things which are a challenge. But the thing which I wanted to touch on most is the issue of content regulation. Content regulation is one of the major challenges. To me, when you talk about OTT services, I don't care much about the issues of price because they are helping to drive the prices of service down. But the main issue which I think as the industry we need to work together with regulators and also with policymakers is on the issue of content regulation. If you want to provide your service to your certain market, I think it's very, very important, even if, regardless where you are located, to understand the need of the market where you are providing service. Because one of the challenges, some providers, they sit somewhere else and they are providing content in certain markets, but they don't understand even the need and the culture of that market. And that is why it actually creates a problem that sometimes politicians or policymakers take decision to say, we block access to this service because we have not gone to understand what is their requirement, what are the needs, how can we meet them. To me, for us to be able to move forward in terms of this new innovative service on the content regulation side, I think the industry has to do more on self-regulation so that there is less regulations from the regulators. The industry has to regulate itself in terms of saying, are these things acceptable? Can this type of content be viewed in this market? So those are the things which you have to look into so that you make sure that you provide the right content to the right market, because or else we'll have these challenges. I think of late you have seen some or heard some news in other countries when elections were approaching. The government just took a decision that, we're going to block the internet completely so that nobody accesses the social media. Because things which are happening in the social media, they're going to have influence in the election, but maybe sometimes wrongly. Because some of the information which may be said on the social media will have an impact, and that impact will last for 5 years, and it will have a serious impact on the economy. So those are the kind of things which I say, as the industry, we need to work together. It's not something, not only for regulators to address that, it's for us as the whole industry to work together so that we make sure that these platforms, they do what is right. I mean, I had an argument sometime with somebody and I said to him, well, even when you are a publisher of a newspaper, you wouldn't just publish something just for the sake of publishing it. You actually have to look at it. So let's work together in terms of addressing that. The other issue which is of hand and a major challenge is the issue of cybersecurity. I think cybersecurity, the coordination among the stakeholders, I have found it to be very challenging. I have to be honest, it's not only coordination to the outside world, it's even coordination within the country itself. Because there are other stakeholders which you have to talk to, who sometimes to them, they have never understand the word consultation. And when you say we have to consult, they say you are wasting time. We need to implement. And sometimes it doesn't work that way. With cybersecurity, there is a need to get the stakeholders on board so that people understand what are the issues. Finally, on my 1 minute is, yesterday we had a workshop which opened us to say, regulatory coordination is very key. The things which we are talking about, Internet of Things, they're going to be touching on a wide spectrum of the economy. It's not only about on the ICT side. And we need to coordinate with other stakeholders. We're having a chat that, for example, you'll find that we are doing a lot of work on the ITU, working on the issues of spectrum. But when you look at the connected cars, we need to be discussing with the radio authorities, the people who are building roads, what are you requiring? What type of spectrum do you require? What are the type of services are you going to need? But that coordination is lacking. And I think as we go back, we need to consult with other stakeholders, more especially with other regulators, so that we are in a same equal footing and we can work and move this industry forward. And those are my final remarks. Like I indicated, one of the key words to me is let's have less regulation, but industry self-regulation has to come on board. Thank you.